Friends. Okay, actually, whoops. You go over here, move this over, and this will give me a YouTube link in just a second. Then we can get started. Hi, folks. My name is Kent, and I do office hours every week, and that is what we're doing right now. So here's a link to the YouTube, but we also have Zoom. That's what we're streaming through, and the folks who are in the Zoom get to ask me questions. And you can also ask questions in Discord. Sorry, I just was shoveling snow and I'm really cold, so my mouth is moving slower. Okay, yeah, I can't even feel this. Warm up. So yes, I've got a couple of questions in the Discord here, and then you can feel free to jump in the Zoom and ask me questions there. And that's where, where I give priority or preference. So is there anybody in the Zoom call right now that has any questions before I jump into Discord?
Yeah, hey Ken.
Hi.
I have a couple of just like kind of basic JavaScript questions
Sure.
that are related to some of the exercises in Epic React. So the first one is there's the send profile queue thing that you do for the profiler,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't remember which one is that.
So it's the performance one, but also we do
Right.
this in the Bookshelf app as well.
Yeah, and I was wondering, why do you return the promise in that function?
Oh yeah. So right here we return a promise. You know, you don't really need to do that. I think when I was writing it initially, I wrote the function before I used it, and I just kind of had I kind of assumed that whoever was calling this function was going to want to wait for that function to finish before continuing or something. But in retrospect, as I was actually using it, it was kind of a fire and forget thing anyway, so we don't really care whether it was successful or anything. Like, what are we going to do if our profile or our profile doesn't get reported? We're not going to report that to the user, and if that doesn't get reported, then like reporting that to a backend service probably wouldn't work either. So yeah, there's not really any reason to return a promise at all in here. And also in the Bookshelf app, we do this in, I think it's in components profiler. Here it is. Yeah, so we do the same thing. Here we're returning a call to the client to actually make a request there. But yeah, like the only place where this is called is inside of set interval. So like we're not even calling this directly. So yeah, there's not any reason to return anything at all. Actually, we just delete this, return nothing, and don't bother with the return right there. I think if you're using TypeScript, then you'd probably get a warning right here. I haven't tried this, but I'm guessing you'd get a warning right here saying, hey, a promise is being returned here, but the set interval is not going to handle that. So do something different. If you remove the return value here, then you'll probably get a warning on this saying that you're ignoring the promise, in which case you just say, yeah, but I don't care. Or you could add a .catch. That's probably what I would do if I was working in TypeScript and wanted to change this today. I just add a .catch with a comment that says we don't care if this fails.
Okay. And then I have the other question is about the browser API thing that you do in the testing module. So I'm just kind of a little bit confused with the await. Why, like you resolve the promise and then you await it, and I don't really understand that. Why do you have to await the promise after you resolve it?
Which exercise is that?
That's the number six.
Okay. So right here, you're talking about this line right there. Yeah, this is actually a pretty common question. So what's happening here is, let me back up and kind of explain in general what's going on. So we have this where is it? Yeah, we have this location component that is using a third-party hook, which under the hood uses geolocation off of Navigator to get the user's current position. And so we mock that because that's not supported in JSDOM. And even if it were, we'd still want to mock what the position is so it's consistent in our tests. And so because that's a callback API, we actually create our own promise so that we can make some assertions before and then trigger that promise to resolve and then make some assertions after. And so right here, we render the location. This is all going to get called, and we'll say, okay, let's take this promise, and when that's done, then we'll call the callback. So that gives us time to assert on the loading state, and then we resolve so that we can say, okay, this promise has now been resolved, and we can now call the callback, which will trigger a re-render. The reason, and because that triggers a re-render, that's why we have to put this inside of act. So you don't normally need to use act directly, but this is one situation where you do. So the question is, here we're awaiting act. This is async, and then we're awaiting this promise. If you were to pull this up and run it locally, this is probably what you noticed. You can actually delete this await promise. You don't need the await promise for things to work. So the question is, why do we have await promise here? Is that, am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so, and in fact, I've gotten pull requests to this to remove await promise. And I closed it and tried to explain, which means I should probably add some notes to the markdown file explaining this exercise. You can feel free to do that. Beat me to it. That'd be awesome.
Okay.
So here's why. The reason is that tests are more than just about passing and not passing. Tests are about communicating intent. And what we are trying to communicate here is when I render the location, we're going to see a loading spinner of some kind or something, some label of loading. And then I want to trigger the the request to get the user's location to resolve. So I want that to finish. And then I want to continue and verify that loading is not in the document anymore and that the right coordinates are in the document now. So that piece there where we say I want the loading to finish, or I want the request for getting the loading state to be complete, that's what we're trying to communicate here when we say resolve this and then wait for the promise to complete resolving. So if you remove the await promise, it technically works, but the only reason that it works is just by happenstance of the way that the event loop is getting, or different, what is the word I'm looking for? We're queuing up things on the event loop. And so the fact that this works is just just sheer luck of the way that things are getting queued up. So here we resolve this, and then this immediately will get called. Well, it doesn't immediately get called, but because we're awaiting this act, that gets scheduled on the next tick of the event loop. So the callback happens to get called before our async act resolves. And that's why the test continues to work. But I don't want my test to rely on happenstance. There are lots of things that we could end up doing to break it, and we'd be really confused why it's breaking. And so instead, we say, hey, I want to resolve this. And then I don't want to proceed with my test until this promise has been completely resolved. And so that means like I want the, I just want to make sure that this promise has been resolved, so therefore the callback will be called. So that's the reason. It's partly in to communicate the intent, and also to make sure that everything has been run before we continue through our tests without relying on just things just working luckily, I guess. Does that? It's kind of hard to explain, and I did a poor job of it.
No, I understand. I don't think I would be able to like I don't think I understand.
Yeah,
write
maybe
it
this
in
is
the
why I
document.
haven't written about it either, because it's hard to explain, especially in words. I could see a talk being written about this with like visual graphs and stuff, something I'm not going to do.
Okay.
But,
Yeah, I've been like looking for videos on YouTube on promises because I feel like it's something that I still don't have a firm grasp on, and it's hard to find people that explain it in a way that it's still like I feel like I struggle with it a little bit.
Yeah, I've got a good resource for you for that. It's Promises. I think I put too many E's in there. Promises, JavaScript. Come on, it's Promises. That's what I'm looking for. It's called Promises. Here we go. So I'll put this in Discord. And it's pretty cool. You just put any promise code in here and then it will graph it out and you can like go step by step. You can go backwards in time and yeah,
Nice.
it's legit.
Cool.
I think it's very awesome. So and then you hover over it, it'll tell you how that promise resolves. Each one of these represents a promise, an individual promise. And yeah, because you're actually creating a bunch of promises as you attach a then or a catch. I wonder, this was created quite a while ago. I wonder if this supports async await. Let's try this. Async and then await, fetch, blah, and then go. Yeah, it does. Nice.
Nice.
And then you can have
Cool.
a try and a catch, throw, blah, and then I don't know if it does. It may not quite, because this should have branched off the catch. Anyway, it's a pretty cool place. And once you have a good handle on promises, then translating that over to async await just is a matter of practice. But I do have like 2 hours or so worth of working through some promises stuff. I spend a lot of time in here, and it is on YouTube. Let me find it. Yeah, playlists. And
Ken, I shared it on the channel because I feel like you shared it a few
yeah, I did share this
office
pretty
hours
recently.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good luck. Promises are tricky.
Yeah.
But thank you for asking the questions.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Did you have anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you so much.
Sure. Cool. Anyone else in the call before I go over to Discord? Okay, great. So let's go up. I think this is about it. And somebody answered Arvin's question. I saw that, so thank you. That's good. Yeah, thank you, Peter and Bala. Okay, and Peter, I did notice this question the other day. So I did I did merge a couple pull requests at 2 a.m. Yesterday morning. And I did not stay up that late. I don't normally stay up super late. What happened is I just woke up in the middle of the night and I wasn't feeling well. And so I just went to take a shower. And while I was waiting for the water to heat up, I just merged a quick PR from my phone. So that's what happened there. Not nearly as interesting, I suppose. But yeah, I typically try to get about 8 hours of sleep every night. I wake up at right now my routine seems to change because kids get older and kids change. But yeah, right now I go to bed at around like 10:30 or 11 and I wake up at 7, just in time to rush my kids to school as fast as possible. So when I was growing up, I was homeschooled in 5th grade, and my mom would write down just in notes, like on a note paper, all of my assignments for the next day, the night before. And so I would wake up at like 5 or like sometimes 4:30. I would grab that notebook and I would work through all of my assignments. And then I'd stop, take a break for breakfast, and then I'd continue working through it, and I'd be done by around 9 in the morning. And so then I'd have the entire day to do whatever I wanted. It was awesome. And I'd love to do that sort of thing still. But my wife is kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, where she likes to stay up late and get up late or as late as she can. And so I've kind of I'm fine with doing it that way. So that's because I don't want to go to sleep by myself. So anyway, as far as like your specific question though, because you were asking about yeah, what you tried to integrate. Yeah, so yeah, work-life balance. Before I was full-time on my own, I actually I wrote a blog post about, that kind of covers this. Whoops, it's productivity, and I will paste that here. This kind of outlines some of the things that I do, like in a typical day before I left and went on 100% on my own. And basically it amounted to, if I'm like working on a big course or something like that, then once my kids go to bed, then I'll record videos and stuff after that, because when I had a full-time job, I couldn't do that during the day. I could work on workshop material if I was giving that workshop to engineers at PayPal, and I did do that, but I couldn't like record videos for Egghead during like my normal work hours. That would be unethical. So I didn't. And yeah, it kind of ended up being like, normally if I was working on something, my wife is kind of, she likes being with me and I like being with her, but she spends an entire day with 4 kids who are all very small and very much in need of attention. And so at the end of the day, when we finally get them to bed, she doesn't want to be around people. She wants to be alone. Not always, like we hang out and play games and stuff, the two of us as well later. But yeah, often that happens. And so when that happens, it just makes sense for me to go off and do something on alone for myself. My kids go to bed between 7 and 8. And so I have a couple hours in the evenings. And so that's normally when I had a job, a full-time job, that's what when I would do recordings of videos and stuff like that. So now, as like the work-life balance is kind of tricky, and it's been a little bit tricky for a while because my office is in my home. This is a bedroom that I've converted into an office. And so like the kids knock on the door. Anybody who's watched me live stream or anything knows that the kids interrupt frequently. And I don't mind. I enjoy it, unless somebody paid to attend a workshop. I don't like getting interrupted when I'm taking somebody's time that actually paid for my time. But yeah, if it's for you all and a kid were to knock right now, I'd say I'll be right back. So it is a little bit tricky to balance work and life. I think that I have a tendency to give more time to work than I should. So like when I'm hanging out with the kids and maybe they're distracted doing something else and I'm just on the couch and they've disengaged from me for a second, then I'm absolutely pulling out my phone to just check stuff. This is a personal failing, a matter of personal failing, and it's a subject of conversation when I visit with my therapist. This is actually the thing I'm working on most right now, is making sure that I stay engaged with my kids, even if they disengage from me. That's not like a break for me. That's opportunity for me to engage in some other way. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. It's not easy to work on. When, like, as far as like notifications on my phone during a family trip, I'm pretty much I don't disable notifications, but the way that my notifications work is I don't get a vibrate for anything except for phone calls. Sometimes, yeah, that's pretty much it. The only thing, oh, and text messages. Yeah, I'll get a vibrate for that. But everything else doesn't vibrate the phone. It comes up as a notification. And so during those downtimes when, at random times, then I'll pull out my phone and I'll take a look. And the amount of automation that I have for open source allows me to just pull out my phone, look at a pull request, if I'm happy with it, I'll just merge it. If I need to make some comments, like it normally, that normally fits in like a 5-minute time frame max. So yeah, it kind of depends on the situation. Yeah, and what do you do when you can't fall asleep? Yes, this has happened. I have definitely gotten up out of bed when my wife has fallen asleep, and I can't fall asleep because I'm thinking about something, I'm excited about something. I've gotten out of bed to go work on it and stayed up pretty late to work on that. Or like if my wife and I are just in bed watching a TV show, like Star Trek or something, then we'll, if she's fallen asleep and I'm working on something, then once she falls asleep, I'm like, okay, I will just keep working until I'm done working, or I can't keep my eyes open. I've done that before too. I don't do that a lot, but it does happen. Whether I recommend this, I don't think I do. But I don't know. Sometimes it's just really hard because you're just really jazzed about something. There's one event specifically that I remember that was a very bad situation, and I will, as a word of caution for any of you in a relationship with somebody who this could happen to you. So my wife was upstairs and I was down in my office, and she texted me to ask how much longer I was going to be working on something. And I was working on open source. I was working on a library called API check, which is like prop types just extracted from React before prop types was extracted from React. I made an issue and I was like, hey, could we take prop types and pull it out of React? And they're like, no. Well, that happened later. So anyway, I was working on this and I was just like, I was super in flow, and my wife texted me and I was like, yeah, it'll be, I don't know, like we never guess it right. Like it's always wrong. So my estimate was like, it'll just be like 20 more minutes. But then I had another idea, and then another and another. And after like 30 minutes, she texted me again and said, hey, are you coming? And I said, yeah, it won't be too much longer. And then it was, and it kept on going all the way until like 2 a.m. when she finally came down to my office and gave me the what for to say, hey, I didn't appreciate you leading me on. And like, if you wanted to stay up all night, then just tell me that's what you're going to do. But you kept me up because I was waiting for you. So that was a moment where I was like, maybe I should not put so much time and effort into something nobody's paying me for. And I should be more considerate of my relationships.
Was that relatively recent where you mentioned that on Twitter?
I may have mentioned this. I definitely remember talking about this.
Because recently you did talk about reprioritizing, which is
yep. There was. I think I did tweet about this a few months ago or a few weeks ago. Yeah, so it that was a pretty important time in my life where I kind of decided, you know what, I need to be more considerate of my my relationships. So anyway, I do sometimes a better job at that than others. But yes, the other day when it was a 2 a.m. PR merge, that was just because I woke up in the middle of the night. And so cool. Any follow-up questions, Peter?
Thank you for sharing. The 10 more minutes is definitely something to watch out.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's see. Yeah, Yago had a question. Let's see. What would you do if you were in the beginning of your career to improve your code quality and get more confident in what you put out? So at the beginning of my career, I knew that I was that my skills paled in comparison to my coworkers, and so like I had a lot of people that I looked up to and was like, boy, I can't wait until I have that skill. But I was never afraid to share what I created. Like I had too much hubris for that, I guess. I just was I knew that it could be better, but I was happy with what I had accomplished, I guess. So I never really felt like my code wasn't welcome on GitHub, I guess. I've always been very, very public with my stuff. I don't often make or write code that doesn't end up being public. Ever since like the beginning of my coding career, I've always been happy to publish my stuff. I definitely have felt like I didn't belong and like I was going to be discovered, that like I'm not as good as I thought I was, especially when I went to a company called Alianza, a very small company. I ended up hiring another front-end dev, and I spent a year there, and I was developing my skills and everything. And then when I transitioned to PayPal with a bunch of other engineers who were all more experienced than me, that was when, like, that transition right there, I felt like, oh snap, they're gonna find out that I don't know anything, because they're actually like, they're good engineers, and all this time I've been thinking that I'm really pretty good at this stuff. But I'm going to go over here and they're going to be like, wow, we should not have paid you as much as we did. But that didn't happen. So the thing is that I think often we see that there are two people in the world, just like the way that we think about it. There's us, and then there's the combined knowledge of everybody else is the other person. And so we see that circle of knowledge, and there's certainly some overlap. In fact, there's 100% overlap because we think that everybody knows everything we do plus everything else. And at least this is the way that I've felt. And that's where I really start to feel imposter syndrome. But the reality is that it's not just one giant circle of what everybody else knows, but it's, billions of smaller circles, and you have overlap with many of them, but not all of them. And there's two sides to this where some people know everything that you know and then some, but most people know only some of what you know, and all it takes for you to think that they're one of the people who knows everything is that they reveal to you in some way that they know something that you know. And once you see that overlap, then you think, oh, they probably know this, and they probably know like everything else that I know, and everything else that there is to know. And so it becomes really easy to feel like worthless, I guess. At least that's kind of how I felt. And so how I combated that is just recognize the fact that, the one way to combat this is to just not care. So what? If everybody knows everything, like if the reality is that you're just a small bubble inside of this bigger bubble of what everybody else knows, so what? I don't think it matters. And that's the biggest way to combat that feeling of imposter syndrome, is just to figure out how to not care. And then you'll be pleased to find out that that's not the reality, and people don't know everything that you know, plus some. But everybody has their own skills and own knowledge, and like everybody who's listening to my voice right now knows a lot of stuff that I don't know, and that's great, and I'm fine with that. I'm happy with that, and it's irrelevant to whether you feel self value, how you value yourself. And this takes a lot of introspection and like thinking and considering what really matters and everything. It's not an easy thing. I don't want to give that impression, but it is. I think it's the only way out, because you're always going to find people that know more than you do about every subject that you know. So you've got to find another way to cope with that. And it really comes down to being able to feel valued from just yourself. Like find happiness and joy from things that you can control. So.
Yeah, so a good example of this is actually in that Ray group, we were tackling the TypeScript conversion for the hooks testing library, and a lot of the people that wanted to work on it were like, oh, I'm not good at TypeScript. I don't know anything about TypeScript. There's probably better people than me, but I still want to help. Some of those people end up being extremely knowledgeable in niche parts of TypeScript, whereas like my TypeScript experience is from my previous job, but mostly we just inline types, casted types. We didn't use a lot of generics. We didn't use a lot of more advanced typing. So I'm sitting there learning from these people that just said, I don't know any TypeScript. And that puts in perspective for them, because I'm like, hey, keep telling me. And they're like, oh, I don't know if this is right. I'm like, it's working. You know? And I'm learning. So if it's wrong, I don't know what's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and you find out what's wrong pretty quick, especially like this is where it's nice, where it's something that's an open source, and you can experiment with things and break things. But yeah, that's a great point. We often don't know as much as we think we do, and this is what stops people from writing blog posts and stuff too, as you don't think that you're qualified, but you are.
Yeah, I think it just comes a little, like you said, you think everyone knows whatever you know, everything else. And I feel like inserting yourself in like places that have people that are very knowledgeable makes you feel kind of like this. Because even in the Discord, I've been engaging more and stuff, but I feel like I'm not like, I fail in comparison to other people, like not just in the Discord, like job and stuff, but just curious because, and I know like I'm pretty new in my career. I've only been coding for like a year and a half. So yeah, it just gets kind of frustrating sometimes, and I just wanted to know how you dealt with it.
Yeah, yep. And that's the key right there, is to figure out how to stop comparing yourself. It's not easy, but that's the key. As to to when and the way that you said that, which is the way that anybody would, in comparison to other people, and you've got to just nix that from your thought process. Not easy, but it's the best way that I have experienced.
Another suggestion, if you're up for it, is I actually started off with significant imposter syndrome. I still get it. That doesn't change. But the reason for that is I previously spent most of my life preparing to be in law enforcement, and I suddenly when I got out of the military, I tried being an entrepreneur. I went back to school for criminal justice. I was going to go be a cop. And then suddenly my life changed, and I went and joined a coding boot camp, okay, where essentially all you experience is self-doubt, and other people around you seem to know everything, but in reality, they're also experiencing self-doubt and struggling. And so everybody's trying to support each other. At the end of that, though, something I came to discover is, because I was following all these people on Twitter, like Kent C. Dodds, okay? And I was at the very beginning of my career. I was comparing myself to these people that had been doing it for years already. At one point, I decided, you know what? Instead of trying to compare myself to these people that have far more experience than I do, and they're also saying, yeah, I experience imposter syndrome, why don't I just look at them as role models and mentors? Which I kind of forced on Kent, by the way.
Well, I have appreciated seeing you in the community. You've been a really positive, even before the Discord, really positive force in the community in general. So thank you. And Iago, I've seen you around too. You've been able to contribute some really great stuff to the community in general, as well as in the Discord. So we're happy to have you here. So great. Yeah. So here with Kakoa, I'm not sure how to say that. Sorry if I'm saying it wrong. But yeah, wondering about implementing component unmount animations. This is something I've never done. Not personally, I've never written this. I have done this for like using animation libraries, but I have to relearn it every time I do that. So I'm afraid that I can't really give you any good advice in this regard. You'll notice that we don't talk about animations on Epic React, and that's because I just haven't had enough experience to feel comfortable teaching about it. So this is something that it's on my list of things to add to Epic React, which means that it's on my list of things to learn. And I will eventually learn how to do this, and then I can answer your question. But if anybody else wants to pick that up and take that conversation over to probably React, the React channel, then that would be more than welcome if you have some experience with that. Sorry. I try not to BS my stuff, and I just tell you what it is. I don't know. Okay, Daniel's wondering if I have to implement a new feature. Yeah, great question, Daniel. So let's imagine this page is like I don't know, you're working on your e-commerce site. It's a checkout, and so you've got your you know, the information where you show the quantity. Maybe you can change the quantity of items in your cart, shows the total. And so do you start with like the layout of the page, or do you start with the individual components that you know you're going to need to build for the page? I start from the top. And the reason that I start from the top is if you start from individual components, then you don't know what you need. So you're building, each one of those components is an abstraction, and you don't know what those abstractions are going to need because you haven't used them yet. And so you need to build, I always start from the top and go in and go down so that I know when to add different layers to, or when to take different pieces of that and break it out to an abstraction. If you try to build the abstraction first, you'll almost always build it wrong. And so, yeah, that I don't have any more to say about that. Start from the top, move down. And yeah, and avoid hasty abstractions. And I'll shout out to that right there. Okay, cool. Thank you for answering this question, Lucas. Thank you so much for answering that. I do not have experience. I have heard of Framer Motion. People seem to love it, so it's great. I think that the other one that you might look into is React Spring, but I feel like that is a very low-level primitive, and React or Framer Motion is a little bit easier. There's also, wasn't there a Pop Motion or something? Pop Motion, React, Pose, that's what it is. Yeah, popmotion.io/pose, and it's deprecated. Oh, nice. So Framer Motion is now the thing. Cool. Yeah. So this is probably what I'd start with. Yeah. I wouldn't know how to build it myself though. And oh yeah, and there's React Spring right there. Yeah, there you go. So you could try either. I don't have an opinion. I can say that React Spring is interesting to me because the person who works on React Spring also works on React 3 Fiber and a bunch of other awesome libraries. And that dude is just, he's got a really big brain or something because he knows stuff. I had a really awesome conversation with him as part of Epic React. We have an interview on there, and he's just a brilliant person. So anyway, but I'm sure that Framer Motion maintainers are amazing as well. And so there you go. Okay, one query was asked this in an interview. Oh. Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't know why people ask trivia in interviews. I would never do this. But yeah, I mean, you can take this, you could console log these, and the element is a React element. And the ref, once this has actually been rendered and stuff, so if you were to console log in a use effect, for example, then my ref would be an object that has a current property on it that points to the DOM node that React created for this. So they're like completely different things.
Yeah, I think this is somebody trying to find a way to not whiteboard, but get a good idea of your understanding of React.
I guess, yeah. Yeah,
Not,
I could see that. I'm more interested in like, hey, let's build this component together, sort of things. But
yeah, this is still not an ideal interview. If you actually follow me on Twitter, me and Lori and Tech will constantly complain about interview processes.
Yeah,
it is a ongoing thing. It's one of the few things that you'll see me actually like rage on Twitter.
Yeah, interviews are hard. If we were lawyers, we'd all take the bar. But if we had a standard exam for developers, we'd all revolt because it's impossible. Like, who would keep that thing up to date? And how do you judge? Yeah, it's stupid. So interviews are hard. I don't know the solution. Yeah. But anyway, that's the difference. One of them is you might. It's called a React element, but it feeds into the thing that everybody calls the React or the virtual DOM. So they might have said, hey, this is virtual DOM, this is actual DOM. That might be the simplest way to say that, I guess. But you'll learn all about both of these things in Epic React Workshop 1 and Workshop 2. So yeah, fun stuff. It's Kiran or Kiran. Can you tell me how to pronounce your name? Is it Kiran or Kiran or Kiran?
Kiran.
Kiran. Is it
Yes.
Kiran?
Yes, correct.
Oh, Kiran. Okay, cool. Use a decision variable. Okay, so yeah, this is interesting. So yeah, you have a store. So like it's just a global variable. You have access to all of the state. You have this dispatch thing, and you've got it looks like you also have you're just tacking on a bunch of stuff to this global object. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So yeah, I hesitate to say anything's a bad practice. Like the worst practices are making people millions of dollars every day. So like it's hard to call something a bad practice. But there are things that will make this sort of approach challenge. And that is like if you have a single place where all of your state lives, how do all of the consumers of that state know when that state changes? And that's pretty easy to do. You do this pub sub thing. Yago has a cool library he just wrote that basically does this pub sub thing for you, all integrated with React. Yeah, and there are plenty of these all throughout the internet. So you have this pub sub. One of the challenges with this comes down to like whether so I'm consuming this state, but then some of the state changes and I don't care about that particular state change. I only care about like a piece of this. So yeah, Yago actually, his solution is pretty good, where he just says, hey, I only care about, where is it? Use derived from store. Oh yeah, sweet. So you got a function form, but this one doesn't allow you to update it. Is that right, Yago? And that's how you got around the problem that
Yeah, that's actually, it just creates like a state based on that callback that you give. And then you can update like this state, but it doesn't update the store. You can have a second updater, but it's only for this state.
Is this like Redux Lite? Is that what this is?
I was just trying to do something for that with PubSub, and then I ended up just integrating with React. And
it's pretty
added
fun.
to use derived from slice. You can use like a slice of a store object.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
That's pretty,
yeah. So, and I've seen a lot of these sorts of things on the internet, and I think that it's great that lots of these exist. What it tells me is that somebody found a problem and they solved their problem, and then they open sourced their solution, and I think that's great. So yeah, so that's what you typically end up with when you have some sort of global outside of React state sort of thing.
I mean, I was going to suggest something along the lines of like a custom hook that has context so that it can be, essentially shared between these components without like having like this like global like map or object or whatever that's completely separate from the application state.
Yeah, for me, it doesn't need to be in context, except for a couple of situations. Like, well, one example would be server-side rendering. So if you have this global variable in your server-side rendering, then users' data starts to mix.
Yeah.
So you need to partition it across sessions, but even then that's not entirely secure. So putting it inside of context, initializing it in there and having it all live within the context of a single React tree can really help with that. If you're not doing server-side rendering, then who cares? You just make it a module and import it. It's easier than using context, and it works just fine. The challenge that you'll have though with the naive approach to adding like PubSub to something so global is every single component is going to re-render when anything changes.
No, I was referring to Kieran's situation, not PubSub.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So like that's the natural thing that comes when you have something like this, is you have to implement PubSub for the React components to know. And you can't avoid PubSub even with context. When something lives outside of React, you have to have some sort of notification mechanism to let React know it needs to re-render because state changed. So anyway, like it's not necessarily super bad. I wouldn't do it myself. And one of the reasons why global variables was always frowned upon is because you don't know, like this module initializes this value, but then this module depends on that value. So you need to make sure they're loaded in the right order. We don't have this problem quite as much because we have real modules now. And so like having things load in the right order is not a big deal. I mean, if you really truly had a situation like that where this one initializes some global value and then this one relies on that as it's being initialized, then yeah, the loading order would matter for that, and that would be super annoying, something to avoid. But yeah, typically I guess I'd have to see more of what things look like to give specific recommendations on how to avoid problems. Yeah, I'm not sure what else to say about that. Good luck.
Maybe that if anything that does not have to be global becomes part of this global solution, whatever, it's getting very hard to debug. Like if lots of stuff is getting there.
Yeah, that's a good point. And this is one of my my big gripes with Redux. Isn't what it is, it's what it makes people do. And it, of course, it doesn't make people do anything, but it in every app that I ever saw that used Redux and ever worked it with, it was always the case that we just, Redux exists, so we put everything into Redux. It just like it's a magnet for state. And that just makes it really difficult to manage because it doesn't scale. And the more you add, the more complex it gets to add or remove anything. Anytime you need to make a change to this feature over here, you have to worry about the impact of all the other features everywhere else. And so, yeah, I guess I do have one other thing, and that is my co-location blog post. So yeah, give that one a look. Okay, cool. We're gonna move on. I got 10 more minutes, and Ryan keeps on messaging me. So I don't know if you hear that, but I keep hearing this. So sorry about that. Okay, so why are a lot of companies asking for TypeScript and React knowledge? Yeah, that's frustrating that they just drop your app for not having experience with anything. Sorry, I'm sure you have experience with many things, but it is frustrating that a company would drop anyone's application for not having experience in any one thing. That's what I meant to say. So yeah, why? And I can't really say anything to that other than those companies are the worst.
Back to my rage.
Yeah.
This is simply put. I can't pronounce your name, but you dodged a bullet. Is what happened. That tells me right there. It's a huge red flag for they're not willing to invest in you as a resource, as you as a contributor to their company. They want somebody that is going to come in and make them money.
Unfortunately, I wish that were always the case. Unfortunately, sometimes what happens is there's misalignment from different people in the company. So that it could be that the person who had your resume threw it out when everybody else at the company would be like totally cool to work with.
Yeah, that's a good
So
point too.
yeah, so that person should change. But whatever because even at PayPal, it was an amazing place to work. But there, I had some engineers who would interview or ask questions or raise flags, and everybody has their own approach to this, and you try to correct them. But
Yeah,
anyway, so
there's a lot of gatekeeping still, but
yeah,
it's getting better overall. It's getting better. So
yeah, I think it is. But yeah, we definitely still have this. You've done 6 interviews and they all dropped your application because you don't have that experience. It's also it's an insecurity for them. They're not confident in their ability to identify whether you can learn their stuff and whether you can contribute. So it's their problem, not yours. But I mean, it is your problem because you're trying to get a job. So here's what just to answer the question of why, I think that we're seeing just a huge increase in people knowing the value that TypeScript and React offer, just a huge amount of value there. And so because that is the way that it is, I mean, you could stand and pick it if you want to, but if you want to eat, then you probably need to get a job. And so you got to play the game that is being dealt to you.
yeah, I can help you out with that as well. First off, you have a rocket next to your name. That tells me you're using Epic React. So you know React. Put that on your resume. Say you're knowledgeable in React. The second thing is there's TypeScript clubs here. There's like the raid group does TypeScript conversions, and everybody helps each other. They jump on and mob code together. Like I said, people were helping me with TypeScripting with typing, and I've been doing it for a year. So there's always more to learn with TypeScript anyways, especially with when they go from even one minor version to the next, you're suddenly in a new world. So just get some basics down with TypeScript and then say, I know TypeScript.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. I mean, don't lie, but you can say I have experience in, so you can get through that filter. It doesn't take long to say to be able to have enough experience where you can say I have experience in these technologies. You could spend a weekend building a project, and with Epic React, you have the bookshelf app that you could work on, and you could contribute to an existing project. So if you're worried, I don't want to spend all this time setting up tooling for TypeScript, when you're at the job, you won't often do that. You do that once for a project, maybe modify it over time. But so you go to an existing project that has TypeScript set up and make some contributions or something. And then you can say, I've got experience working with TypeScript. Yeah, so I guess that's all that I have to say. And we've got 5 minutes left.
You converted a whole library. So
yeah,
I mean, if you want to jump in on those situations, feel free to join.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely join the OSS raid group. They're awesome. Okay, question about front-end development. Yeah. So the question is, we've got a bunch of REST endpoints that are basically doing SQL queries. How do you solve this problem without a GraphQL gateway? So, I mean, you don't need GraphQL. Not everybody doesn't have to use GraphQL. I have only a few times used GraphQL. So yeah, having a REST backend, that's not a problem to be in and of itself. But if you are experiencing the problems that GraphQL was created to solve, and you really want to use GraphQL, then maybe stand up a node server that is your proxy. We did this at PayPal, and that worked fine. If you can't stand up a node server, because I know some front-end engineers don't have the power to just deploy a new service, I've been in that situation, then you can actually implement GraphQL in the client and have it run in a service worker or even just like in the browser in the main thread. I wouldn't recommend this, but yeah, like this is one of the cool things about GraphQL and its incremental adoption or takeover of the backend is you can start in the front end because it's all JavaScript. It runs in the browser, and then you can work your way back. So you build out your GraphQL thing in the front end, and maybe move it to a web worker or a service worker, and then move it into a node service. Like once you've convinced the company that, hey, this is really helping us, but we could increase performance quite a bit if we could put this in a node server. And then you push it back further and have your backend engineers do the rest.
It sounds like their main issue isn't the REST API. It's the fact that there's probably many endpoints making SQL queries. And so like if they can turn like all those different endpoints into one request to the front end, that would probably help them performance wise. So that's probably
it's unclear to me what the problem is. So I see that we need to query 2 or 3 endpoints to fill in missing pieces, but why is that a problem? We've always done this. I mean, I know that it's a problem. Like you can have performance problems. So you can drastically improve performance. But if this is like an enterprise app, internal thing or whatever, like who the heck cares if it's going to take another 500 milliseconds even? These are business folks. Like, what are they going to do? I mean, we want to make the web fast and whatever, but at the end of the day, you could like they probably don't care. So yeah, if performance is a big deal, then moving over to GraphQL can help. Or you may not even need to move to GraphQL. If you are able to set up your own node server and deploy that, then you just make your own endpoints for all the things that you want to do. This is actually kind of what Remix does. So Remix is a node server, and you have these loaders, and all of the stuff that you're currently doing in your client side, say, okay, make all these requests, you move all that to the back end, and so Remix will make a single request to that. Then this thing can make all the millions of requests, bundle that all up, and then send that back. And so you're only making one request in the front end. And so if you can use Remix, I mean, it's pre-production ready, but if that's something you want to do, then that could solve this problem too.
Yeah, Gira, if your main problem can be solved, like with what Ken's saying, that's great. Like GraphQL's main 3 benefits come from turning multiple requests into a single request, and then you're not having overfetching or underfetching. So unless you're having those issues, then GraphQL might just be more overhead. It might just be adding additional work layers that you don't need.
Yeah, GraphQL, it solves a lot of problems, but my goodness, does it create a lot too. So you want to be really sure that you're going to reap the benefits before you pay those costs.
I use Relay at work, and it's hard. It's like a steep learning curve.
Yeah, exactly. You want to watch out. Okay, so we're going to wrap up. A couple really awesome references here. Thanks, folks. Cypress mock versus MSW. So I haven't used the Cypress mock thing yet, but here's why I don't think I ever will. I'll play with it for sure, but MSW is just so awesome that I can create these mock service handlers, and I can hit those during development. I can hit them in Storybook. I can put them in my integration tests and even unit tests, however you want to define those terms. And then I could use it in Cypress as well. And the Bookshelf app does this right now. Bookshelf app uses Cypress for end-to-end tests, and we're using MSW. However, I don't recommend this for end-to-end tests anyway. So all the tests that I would write would use Cypress for, I would not mock endpoint or HTTP requests. The only reason that I do this in the Bookshelf app is because MSW is technically our backend. So I don't mock requests with MSW or with anything in Cypress. Now, in testingjavascript.com, I show you how to do this because some people really want to, and there are some good reasons to do this. I suppose, like in testing JavaScript, I do show you how to demonstrate like a failed request, like there's a 500 and what does the app do in that situation. So if you need to do that sort of thing, then I would use MSW instead. I just think it's way more powerful in the fact that I can use it outside of Cypress. So I still haven't used the new Cypress. I think it's Intercept is what the API is called. I still haven't used it. I will play with it when I go to update my Cypress workshop. But for right now, I'm sticking with MSW. Okay. Gonna wrap up here in just a second. Boy, that sounds awful, Richard. I have definitely experienced this sort of thing, and like colleague pushback, I've definitely experienced a lot. Yeah. Let's see. Pretty much anytime you go to refactor something, like somebody makes a pull request to refactor stuff, you're going to see that they changed a bunch of tests or maybe even deleted some tests. And you could add a comment that says, hey, how do you know that this works? How do you know you didn't break something? You deleted all the tests. And you could say, if we wrote integration tests, you wouldn't actually have to change anything. And the integration test would actually make sure that you didn't break anything. It sounds like they're probably, if you were to do that, they'd probably just dig in, honestly. So, man, it is really hard to change people's minds about that. Yeah, it often, like, you can just model the behavior. So you model the behavior that you want. So you write your own test. The problem is if they start telling you what to do, then you're like, well, crap. Actually, Jacob, you've experienced this where like you have a company that is super not into or super into unit testing and shallow rendering, and they don't want to use React testing library and all of that. How do you convince people?
Literally before I left, I overhauled an entire repo from using all snapshots to actual like meaningful assertions that weren't brittle. So their tests were breaking for several reasons, snapshots being one of them. And
yeah, so how do you convince, like, but you had trouble convincing them that your approach was better. How did you convince them to let you do that?
Yeah, I created POCs is one way. The other is I bombarded them with like information, like some of it being your articles, and the fact that I got like information in some people's hands, particularly like other devs, other peers, was able to convince the leads and stuff more easily because I had other people also speaking up for me when I'm not around. So you want to get your peers on board first, not try to convince your managers and your team leads first. That's a uphill battle that's usually not winnable. But if you
assuming that the team lead is kind of the problem. Yeah,
if you can convince most of your peers, that's gonna win you the day most of the time. This was a huge project, so there's many team leads. And then on top of that, it was originally a greenfield. So the fact that I was able to make POCs.
That's a proof of concept for the uninitiated.
So the fact I was able to make these proof of concepts and prototypes and show like, here's the what happens if you're using like Enzyme. Here's what happens if you're using React testing library. And I can show them like, hey, look, these tests are smaller. They're more readable in React testing library. And they're less likely to break if I make a change. So I'll make a change right here and show you, look, this is a minor change. Why is this test breaking? Okay. And then the follow-up is also that, doing shallow renders, like creating prototypes where you're showing like, hey, this is a shallow render. You're kind of like pigeonholing all this information into this component so that it thinks it's connected to these other components, which all you're doing is showing like the codependence it has on things. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's wrap up with this last one from Yago. This interesting pattern. We have the app context. We use memo. Oh, that's interesting. So what's happening here is they're memoizing the React element, the creation of the React element. Now, this is I wouldn't regularly recommend this approach. Yeah. The only thing that you're saving when you do use memo right here is you're saving what this callback is doing. And if what this callback is doing is not a lot, then you're not going to be benefiting anything. So you'll want to make sure that you're profiling first. Now, it could be that you're rendering a whole bunch of components. Maybe you're iterating over a bunch of things, like maybe this is a table and this is a row or something. You're iterating over a bunch of those, and then those render a bunch of things or something. So then you could benefit from this pattern. But often, and this would mean that you most likely don't need to memoize those lower level components, which is kind of cool. So you wouldn't need to use react.memo for those. So yeah, I wouldn't say this is a bad pattern, but if this were all that the code was, then I would not do this because creating a React element is not expensive at all.
Yeah, just a simple implementation for
right.
showing you but I feel like you wouldn't just need to memo like the higher component in the tree, and then you can just do this, and it's only going to change if it changes on the top. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting as well. So yeah, this is another, this might be something I could add to the performance workshop at some point, just to show this is another tool in your tool belt of something that you could try. I have seen this before. It's a pretty interesting idea. So
this looks like, I think their main concern might be like the app context updating too frequently, causing
right. Yeah. So specifically, we have this app context, and I only care to update this stuff when the selected cell changes. And actually, it would be even more useful for if I don't care about the selected cell, but whether this cell is selected. And so you could say selected cell is equal to the cell number, and then that's what you pass as your dependency. And then
just move it outside.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. You got it.
I feel like the cell number itself just got added because it needed to be a dependency, since they were using memo on this whole thing, and it was one of the
But the cell number is unlikely to change very often
Exactly.
for the lifetime of this component, so it's probably fine. The one optimization that you could take to make this go a step further is to extract all of this out of the use memo and then pass that into as a dependency. And because then, even as the selected cell changes, we don't care that the selected cell changed. What we care about is whether the selected cell is now the cell number or it was before and it's no longer. And so you could have a number of optimizations. Now, you're still probably not going to be as good as some of the things that I show in the React Performance Workshop, because you're still going to be re-rendering this cell component. But it's probably fine, because in the React Performance Workshop, we do that. We just have two components. So it'd probably be about the same. Yeah, probably be about the same. May actually even be better. Be something to measure for sure. Okay, I've got to go. This has been fun. We'll see you all in the future on a Thursday. I believe I have a Thursday. Yep, in the schedule. So yeah, we'll see you on Thursday. I've been thinking that I might change when I do these office hours in 2021. So keep that in mind. I may change when these things happen. I might even go to just one a week. I'm not sure. I'm still trying to decide. I don't want to stop doing it though. I think this is a lot of fun and it's kind of interesting. So yeah, anyway, thanks everybody for hanging out. We'll see you.